Cynthia Erivo, welcome to my film podcast on film. It's an honor to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you for asking.
It's so good to see you. So you're in London right now. I'm in LA, and I know we saw each other recently, and but you are deep in rehearsals on Dracula,
Yeah.
and this interview we're going to do today, I really want to give people an inside look into your process, all the emotional and physical decisions you make for your characters. I'm obsessed with your book, Simply More. It's become something that I think about and I quote often because there's a lot of things in there that remind me of childhood and like I was too talkative in school or too
Mm.
asking too many questions. So I want to dive into that aspect as well and how those end up being superpowers later in our lives. But time stamping it right now, you're in London. Dracula is a one-woman show. This is
Yes.
23 characters that you're playing. Can you just give some insight into how that process is going so far and how different physically and emotionally you're going to operate as you switch between characters? Is it as simple as something like where you say a line of dialogue and you switch to the other person and back and forth?
There is that, and then there's another sort of layer. So Kip Williams, who's amazing, my director, he calls it cine-theater. So essentially, you have aspects of film and theater smushed together in one thing. So there are right now we're in the middle of the process of filming the cinema part of the theater, and essentially some of these characters are on camera interacting with a live character on stage. And so I've been doing a bit of both whilst playing different characters. In the last 2 days, I've been two different characters. Then last week, before we went on holiday, I had been Dracula, Lucy, four or five of the characters, and you're going back and forth between different scenes and playing characters within the same scene, and then interacting with a live character who's not there. The interesting thing about this process is that you can't see where the other person is because you are the other person. So you kind of have to guess. There are like precise places for me to be so I don't cross myself. And so you are trying to find the, I guess, Kipps calls it the orchestra. So it's the orchestra of the piece. So each person is responsible for something within the piece, for a melody line within the piece, and how they sort of show up. And there's one that's got more energy. There's one that's quieter. There's one, and they all sound very different. There are a myriad of different accents that we're doing as well. It's a lot of different things and different skills that I've learned across the years put into one place all at once. And the cinema part is literally a quarter of what's going on, because then when we get on stage, that then comes into play, but with me playing other characters as well on stage. So on stage, I'm also not just playing one character. I think I'm playing 10 or so live, something like that. Some of the characters aren't live, but most of them are
It's
at some point.
unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And like, what I find interesting about that is, one of my favorite parts of the book that is for Simply More, there's a story that you tell in the book about going to Broadway finally with The Color Purple
Yeah,
and the crowd standing up and you waiting that beat. And then you turned around to kind of give the audience that
yeah.
idea that we were going to move on to the next part. I'm curious now if since you're the only person essentially playing all 23 characters, and when that moment possibly happens as well, where you have to wait a beat based on the crowd, that's going to
We
be an interest.
can't.
Oh,
We can't.
interesting.
So in this, there's no chance of that happening. I can tell you that now. At least I hope, strangely so, because everything is time. It's all timed. Because if you think about how we speak, that's what's happening on stage, except those characters are already me, so they've been recorded. I have to work with the timing of what's happening within the cinema part of it. So we're interacting. I'm interacting with whoever's on screen, but that person is me. So they're not listening. They can't hear what's going on. I'm responsible for making sure that I feel the speech in where it needs to be filled in. If anything like that happens, everything is thrown off completely. It's all very timed. Yeah.
And I do want to mention this is going to be at the West End in London starting in February. It goes through
Sold
May.
out. Yeah.
Please check it out. I mean, what a remarkable thing for you to be doing. And obviously, one thing I love about reading your book is the culmination of your career and what you've done prior to this, and all leading to this. I think there's a question you ask in one of the chapters at the end of your book. You say, "What's a dream of yours you don't even know you have yet?" Which I think is so interesting. It's like the universe leads us there, but the decisions that we make and what we put into this leads us to these places. I want to kind of structure this at the beginning with this idea that there's multiple ways that you express yourself as an artist. You do it through solo albums, you do it through characters, you do it through books. And what I find interesting about that is they all have different expressions, and I'm assuming that there's different catharsis that you get through expressing yourself through different ways. When you look at like a solo album, when you're singing as Cynthia Erivo, or you're writing a book and you're doing an audiobook as Cynthia Erivo, or a character that you're playing as like Elphaba or Celie, like what do you see as the constant through all three that gives you a certain catharsis and therapeutic nature, but also the difference in how you express yourself through those different mediums?
I think it's the connection that I get to make with people as these characters and as myself, because it's different from form to form, really and truly. As myself, I get to communicate things about me that people might not know, and so there's a connection that's made with me as a person, as a human being, that and a level of vulnerability that I might not necessarily get from playing a character that is outside of myself. And I'm always vulnerable because I need to be when it comes to playing different characters. But there's a sort of thin veil between me and the character, and therefore there's a thin veil between me and the person watching, me and the audience watching, and there's sort of like a protective layer, I guess, for myself. Whereas when I'm playing myself, when I'm singing songs from myself, when I'm writing a book, and inevitably I have to be honest and forward and full, and vulnerable about who I am, and that's what I get to share. But I think each of these forms sort of teaches me a little bit more about myself, about who I am, even if they aren't necessarily me. They sort of uncover different human layers that I may not have been paying attention to. I think Celie was really, and not necessarily even the character, because Celie was a very special one because it forced me to look at the way people see women who sort of disappear for safety. It forced me to look at the way people view beauty. And I feel like I'm constantly like having that conversation about what beauty looks like, what beauty is, and who has it and who doesn't. Because there's a constant narrative with her where she's called ugly. And I think that each of these characters forces other people to look at them through different lenses. I think Alphabet included forces each character around her to see past the obvious, see past the green skin, see past the thing that doesn't necessarily fit the beauty standard, beauty norm. And you have to sort of like find your way past that into the human, the person who's behind all of that, the way in which we would have to anyway in real life. And sometimes we struggle to be honest, it's an interesting thing to find these characters that sort of force people to see beyond the obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a quote in the book. I'm going to read it. It says, "The things that make me me are the things that help me share who the characters are as people." And that is an interesting juggling act as well. Kind of what you're saying is like, where is the balance of what you put into the character from you? And then, like, if you're playing Harriet, you like you say in the book, you like even with Aretha Franklin, you hope that Aretha's proud of the performance in a way. And I find that interesting because even with playing Aretha Franklin or Harriet, people who really existed, you still bring part of yourself to that.
Absolutely.
And so that I'm curious about how you draw that line. I know it's not like black and white in the sense of like there's a gray area. It has to be this idea of like, okay, I can give part of this because I have this lived experience.
Right,
So
right.
how do you juggle that?
It was really interesting with Harriet because Harriet, there were things that sort of like were there already. She was 5 foot. She ran really fast. These are like just facts. She was 5 foot. She was very, very strong. She ran very, very fast. And all of that is like notated in books. She sang. It was a communicative technique for her to make sure that if there was something that she was trying to communicate, she would use song to do so. And so all of that is already in my possession. I'm 5'1". I run really fast. I'm quite strong, and I sing. So those things I don't have to necessarily search for. They're things that I'm in possession of already. And so it's about then going, okay, so this is what I have, but now what is her voice? And so I can use my voice and my understanding of what music and what sound and what musicality is to create the sound of Harriet's voice because we don't have any recordings of her. We don't know what she sounded like. But what I know of little people like myself, when we're short, we go in different directions. We either lift our voices, so we're sort of dainty, so we have very, very high pitched voices, or we lower our voices so we have more strength, so that people don't look down on us. And I'm of the ilk of people that like make sure that the speaking voice is strong and present, so that you don't mistake my height for the person that's within it. And I thought to myself, I think based on what Harriet did, and based on how she commanded a space, based on the fact that she was a really great orator, based on the fact that she ended up being a general at some point, based on the fact that she was a part of women's suffrage, ran a home to take care of people, and did all of this work, there is no way that her voice would not have had a presence. So you find something that feels like it's present. And then and for me, it's interesting because I wanted to make sure that there was space for divine intervention, I suppose you can call it. So should Harriet's spirit, if you believe that I did, want to be in the space, let there be a bit of room for her to sort of drop in and be in the space. So it was a combination of learned skills, things that I already was in possession of, and letting whatever happened.
And it's interesting. Like, do you remember the moment you found the voice? Like for Harriet, like I know you're explaining that idea of like all these things that come into play and kind of how you find it. Do you remember the moment you settled on it? Like, or like was it like a specific thing, or was it more of like a overarching like prep idea?
I don't know the exact time I found the voice. I knew the voice when it was there because it didn't shift, you know? I remember thinking, oh, that's her voice. That makes sense.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is. And we're talking about singing, and like a second ago, we're talking about albums and different expressions and kind of how you express yourself through characters versus your voice. When I spoke to you for the first Wicked, we talked about this idea of how different characters sing differently and how the way a character sings can inform you emotionally about who that person is.
Yeah.
And you gave this beautiful answer about Celie and Elphaba and their journeys through song and kind of
Yes.
what that means for their arcs narratively. When you sing as Cynthia Erivo, like
Yeah.
for like your album, you know, I wonder the difference there and how your instrument works as your voice, as yourself. Like
Yeah.
what do you look at in terms of like what is Cynthia Erivo's voice? Like what do you consider your voice versus a character voice?
I feel like my voice is far more contemporary than a lot of the characters that I
Hmm.
play, and I think I've got a lot more joy in my like. I love to sing.
It feeds you, you say in the
It's
book.
yeah.
Yeah.
It really fills me with complete abandon and joy. And so when I'm singing as me, I I think I have sort of like there's like a carefreeness that I have when I'm singing. I know my skill, but I sort of forget it when I'm singing as myself. It completely sort of goes away, and then the emotion leads the voice when it comes to how I sing, how Cynthia sings, and I'm playful, really, really playful because I know it very, very well. I know what my voice can do. I understand it implicitly. I've learned it very, very well, so I can play within it. It's like an old friend, you know. You know it very, very well. I know my voice very, very well, and so when I'm singing as me, I feel like I have everything at my fingertips. Whereas some characters don't start there; they have to find their way there.
Which is what Elphaba does. Like she
Yeah,
finds, yeah,
she has
like
doubt. Yeah, when you first meet her, she's sort of precocious. She's kind of shy a little bit, you know. And it sort of bursts. She's tentative, and then it bursts out of her. Whereas for me, it's always bursting out of me. I'm not tentative about it. I feel really knowing when I'm singing
that's
as
cool.
me.
It's cool, and it's interesting because like that's what I find fascinating is like when I saw you in Jesus Christ Superstar, it's like that is a different voice
That's a
than
different.
a completely different voice, and it's a different character and the physicality. And we're going to dive into that at some point in the interview as well because the physicality of that performance is remarkable. In the singing part, one of the things I find interesting about singing are harmonies. And I know you talk in the book about singing with your sister in
Yeah,
harmonies when you were younger. To
yeah,
me, as an audience member, when I hear a harmony, I feel calm. There's just
yes,
this beauty in the multiple voices coming together and in a gorgeous like it's just beautiful to listen to.
yeah,
But I want to compare that to musicality of dialogue and then
yes,
musicality of harmonies because if you and Ariana are in the middle of a harmony in a song like For Good, what is that feeling being locked in with somebody in a harmony? And do you compare that at all to the musicality of how you speak in
yeah,
scenes too? And so, like, if you and Ariana are having a scene where you're having dialogue back and forth, there's a
yeah.
musicality to that as well. Can you speak to that idea of like what that sync feels like, and can you compare the two of a harmony versus like a dialogue scene?
There's a very beautiful sort of symbiosis when you can find someone that you can actually harmonize with because what it means is that the other person isn't just singing at you. You have to listen. It really is most of the time if you're in harmony, you're actually listening to the other person more than you're listening to yourself. The point of a harmony is for you to be able to be in sync with another person or persons. So when a choir is singing, you hear them and all their voices meld together, but it feels like it's one voice. It means everyone's listening to everyone else. Because what you want is for no person to push past the dynamic of someone else unless that's what's written. So when you're in harmony, but the dynamic should be one. The tune is different, but where you sit, should be the same space. So when to harmonize with someone is a really delicate thing to do, and I love it when it works. When it works, it's just beautiful, and it doesn't always work. There are not, especially if it's just two people, it's very hard to find a person who you can do that with because that person also has to be good at listening. And what's wonderful about Ari is that she's very good at listening. Her ears are amazing. It's not just her voice, it's her ears. I always, when I talk to people about singing, the thing I talk about the most is listening. You have to listen more than you have to sing. If you're listening, then you'll hear the tune. If you're listening, you'll hear the harmony. If you're listening, you'll hear the rhythm. But if you're not listening, it doesn't matter how well you sing, you'll miss the tune, you'll miss the harmony, and so in essence, you end up creating a dissonance because you're not actually trying to hear anything. When it comes to the harmony of dialogue, I often think it's to do with, again, you can always tell when someone is waiting to say their line. Because if you're waiting to say your line, you're actually not listening to the other person at all. And that there is rhythm within speech, the way we speak with each other. And so even in real life, when we're just talking with one another, I have to listen. I should have no answer prepared for the thing that you are asking me about until you have finished asking me. Because if I have an answer prepared, I haven't listened to the question or the statement you're about to make. And so when on screen, that still has to exist. The what's the word I'm looking for? The freedom to be able to say something that's unexpected because you're listening. No one should expect what's going to come out of your mouth because you shouldn't expect to say what's coming out of you. So I love when speech overlaps. It drives my directors crazy because I'm always like, well, why can't we overlap? Because in real life we overlap. We don't really make space for the next thing because we've already an idea drops in and you say the idea immediately because you're not really thinking about and unless you're actually measured and have it. The only time we wait is if we're in an argument, usually. If we're in a healthy, healed, therapized argument, we wait for the other person to finish speaking. But usually in speech, if we're passionate about something, if we're annoyed about something, we overlap all the time. Speech comes in quickly. Unless you're thinking about something. And if someone's thinking about something, then it might take a second before we come in. And that changes the rhythm immediately. I feel like speech is like jazz, right? If there's a type of music for speech, I think it's jazz. Sometimes it moves fast and it goes back and forth between a person. Sometimes it moves really slowly, and there's thought, and there's breath, and there's time. Other times it's stunted and it repeats and goes back on itself. If a person has to repeat themselves because they feel they haven't made the right sentence or they haven't quite said the right thing, I might go back on myself. I might repeat myself. I might actually let me go back on myself. And I'm just going to say, let me say that again. That's what would happen if I'm not quite sure about what I've said or I'm in doubt. But if I'm really passionate about something, it will come off like a stream of thought, and that's a different rhythm altogether. That flows a little bit more differently. And then, depending on where you're from, your accent then changes the rhythm. And so you hear different types of music when we're speaking. We speak in tune. No one speaks in a monotone because the tune of our speaking is the expression
Yes.
of what we're saying.
That's so interesting. No, you're right though, because I even think about that moment in For Good at the end when the camera comes around and you're kind of off in your own moment of lyrics as you're over each other in a way, and like that's really interesting. But you're right though, when we speak, the inflection of how we speak, there's a musicality. You're 100% correct, and like you speak about this in the book as well. It's like minor notes, major notes, they all say something narratively, emotionally. And that's what I find interesting. And I mean, just to get technical for a second, because I'm a big fan of like diving into like the technical details of like how harmonies work, and just in terms of music and song. When you find your harmonies though, like and hitting those different octaves and kind of like hitting the different notes. Can you speak about how you find those? Like when you're doing For Good with Ariana, and I know it's like with Defying Gravity as well, you take the higher harmony in that song. But can you speak about how you find your octaves, like and how are you already prepped with the octave before you get to that shot? Like
We're prepped with our harmonies. So the music is already written, especially in a musical. What you get is music that's already there. Your harmony is already there. There's something interesting that happened with us though, because we love a step up. So we'll have our harmony, and towards the end, I want to say. So at the very end, there's is that where we did it? Yeah, so I think it's she sings who can say that I've been changed for? Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But and what we're in is actually an octave. I say because I knew you. She says because I knew you, because I knew you. I have been. My harmony has changed. And then at some point we take the step up. Now that wasn't what is written, and we've done it a couple of times throughout the score of this piece, where because we know what our voices are, and we sonically we are more satisfied with where our voices sit. We do a step up. So instead of taking the harmony where it is, what we do is just lift it by it would be a third, I think. So it's a third would be ba 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 ba. So we'll go the whatever the third note is within that octave, within that chord. So a harmony is basically a chord put together. So ba 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 ba. That's one chord. So all of those notes together would be a harmony, right? So if we were singing, who can say I've been changed for the better? Who can say I've been changed for the better? That's two. That's a harmony. So I would go ba ba. So who can say I've been changed for the better? Ba 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 ba. Who can say I've been changed for the better? So those two, instead of doing the first two notes, I would do the 2 second notes, right? That's a step up. We step it up. We're still in the chord, but we've just lifted it a little bit, which makes it a little bit brighter for us, just because of where our voices sit. Yeah.
I just gotta tell you, I have a little tear in my eye because like one of the things you say in the book is stay present. And just in that moment, like listening to you sing, I was just saying how grateful I am to know you. And one, to be sitting here in this chair, listening to you educate me and then hearing your beautiful voice. I just wanted to take a moment to say, this is amazing. I just want to say thank you. It's just a pleasure to know you. And it's interesting. I play guitar for a living, or not living. I play guitar as a hobby, and I think about what you're saying on the guitar when I play a chord or I go up to the 12th fret and I'm starting over on the octaves. It's interesting. Even in No Place Like Home, you go. Like I mentioned this to you at the event. You go up in that one moment where you're like, no, I don't want to do it, but like you go up and you hit all the notes.
Place like home.
Yeah, so it's on one chord?
Yeah, that would be one chord.
Wow. And do you find that ascending yourself, or is that in the music written?
That's in the music written. There's no place like home.
Wow. Unbelievable. It's just truly unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And the choice you get is actually how you do the chord. Like you can separate the notes or you can no place. We have a little trill at the top like home. There's any number of things you can do with that structure. So what I love to do is I'm kind of by the book. I get a structure and I will pretty much sing it as the structure if it's written that way. And I will just occasionally throw something different in. So in that case, let's say, no good deed goes unpunished. Those are the notes. Da 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 da. I would sing, no good deed goes unpunished. Right? So you have like a lilt at the front. No good deed goes unpunished. You have a lift at the end. No act of charity. And it's the how do you change the rhythm? You can swing the rhythm a little bit. No act of charity goes unresented. That note, unresented. There's like a turn in there that wasn't there before, but you add it in for like flavor. It's just how our voices can play with what structure we have.
It changes
know?
the emotion of it too, because you
Exactly.
like when you were doing the No Place Like Home just now, and you were stopping like no play, like you were like doing like it was like
That was
stopped
just, but yeah,
versus
there's no,
like the smooth. It
yeah,
changes it changes what she's saying in a way. Like it changes the emotion of what she's putting out. It's so
that's right.
cool. It's
Yeah,
the instrument becomes like you were going back to like the dialogue and speaking. It's the way you flow with it. It's so cool. And like the whole reason I wanted to do this interview and I started this podcast in general was to highlight these decisions. And I want people to understand what goes into what you do. And, one of the things that we talked about before is we mentioned the cackle when we were talking at the last event. And for people who are listening to this, like Cynthia basically built a character arc for her cackle. And this is all done throughout the first and second film as that cackle reaches its arc.
yeah,
And that's something that is subconsciously happening for us as an audience. We hear it, we
yeah,
feel it. We
yeah,
might not know, oh, Cynthia just added this. This just happened with it. We're feeling it. But can you speak about a design like that and how you make a decision that I'm going to play with the cackle this way because I
yeah.
think it deserves to have an arc in a way with her character?
Well, so I realized that the obviously we're gonna get to a cackle at some point, and it's gonna be the ominous cackle that is for the witch. But when you first meet her, she doesn't know that. She has no idea about that, and she's young and awkward and different. And I thought to myself, there has to be a reason for this cackle. It's got to come from somewhere. There has to be an origin for it. And so what I wanted to do is first build a laugh. Like, what's her laugh? How does she laugh first? What's the tune of that laugh? It's got to be something that comes from a really awkward person who hasn't really spent very much time around a lot of people. And so there hasn't been that sort of correcting that we do sometimes when we're nervous about how we sound when we laugh. So she just has an awkward laugh. And the first time you hear it is when she's on her own, in the field, when she does The Wizard and I, when she has the leap.
That's a growth moment for the character. Yeah.
Yeah. And that moment when she leaps, and she doesn't even know that she's flying at that point, but it's like there's something that we also put in that lift where she sort of does a little leap, and it's like a little tiny bit of flight. She doesn't notice that she can fly. She doesn't notice that that's a part of her powers. And that laugh is it's just like a expression of joy, right? Doesn't know what it is, but she shouldn't know what it is. So it shouldn't sound like the cackle that you hear at the very end. It's just the beginning of something, right? And then as she gets to the very peak at the very end of the song, she runs down the hill, and you hear like a little it's tiny. And so that is like a combination of that leap and the very end. And it's like joy, it's fun, she's tickled. Then you meet her in where is it? You meet her in Loathing, where she surprises Glinda at the very end of it. And now there's intention behind it. And it's like big, but it's lower in her register. So it's not quite the laugh. It's just like a big laugh that has that, it's a little more guttural. It's like meant to scare someone a little bit, kind of forced, but not quite right. And you keep hearing a bit of it as you go on. So that by the time you reach her in film 2, that is a laugh that she's lived with for a while, and she knows that and had to have made the decision to make it her calling card. I wanted to I wanted it to be influenced by what I had heard Margaret Hamilton do, but I also wanted to make sure that it was new and of me. And so I wanted like the arc of what has happened in her life. So I feel like Elphaba's sort of story does this sort of like beautiful arc up and then an arc down. And that laugh sort of follows the arc up and the arc down. And so it's the same tune, the arc, which is the arc that goes up and it has to fall. Just like we see her go up and she also has to fall. So it follows her story, but it also follows the progression of where she's been. Yeah.
These are the things that I just find so mind-blowing. And then the one that you do in her quote-unquote death scene is different as well. It's a different sound. But I had
that's the scream as opposed to the laugh. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I had Alice Brooks sitting here a week or so ago, and who's one of my favorite cinematographers of all time.
Best.
And we were talking about that scene, and I want to bring up shadows and reflections because they are massive parts of this film for both characters, obviously. But what's fascinating is you're so great at what you do that you are still able to perform through a shadow and emotionally have us connect to the moment. And that is just pure talent, but also physicality, a lot of work, rehearsals, and making sure you have it right. But your cinematographer, Alice, who we're talking about, is lighting this so beautifully. But talk about having to, do you have to overperform that moment because we have to believe the motion of it.
That's right. So because shadows are tricky things because if you're not in the right place for the lighting, it becomes so warped that you can't really see what's going on. So there was sort of like a precise place to be so that when the shadow hit the wall, it made sense. It didn't flatten. It was still upright on the wall. And then you have to sort of like overextend so that nothing sort of gets too wide or the dimension shifts too much, so that when I reached out my hand, you could see my fingers and you can see her falling in, you could see the hat. It's all, and everything has to be far more exaggerated so that you could, when she comes around with the broom, it's way more extended so that you can see everything away from the body, so that none of my extremities get melded with the broom, and that you can see a hand on the broom and you can see how she's pointing it. So it really is like shadow play. When you're depending on where the shadow is, things can shift and warp, and you want it to be in a particular at a particular distance with a particular ratio, and you want to make sure that nothing gets extended too far and nothing gets warped too far, nothing goes too small, because that's what shadows do depending on where the light is and where the person is.
Ironically, I always think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola film, and the way Gary Oldman's shadows work in that film. It's so terrifying. You'll see his shadow like choke somebody in a shadow. So can you see your shadow self as you're performing it, or are you not looking at the shadow self?
We did a small rehearsal so I could figure out where to put my body, and John has me on camera, and so we would work out where was best, and I could see my shadow. You know, when you see your shadow on the wall, you can say, okay, well, I can see my hand is doing that. Like right now on my wall, I can see where the shadow is, and I can see what it's doing. And if I need it to be bigger, if I move it away from me in this particular light, it gets bigger. If I bring it closer to me, it becomes the right dimension. So it becomes the same height or same size as what it is. If I lift it up ever so slightly, it becomes really extended and it becomes double. So if I move it to, we're doing that to make sure that we're getting the right thing. If I move further away from the wall, it's too big. If I move closer to the wall, now it's the right size. Like, how close can I get to the wall to make sure it's in the right place? If I depending on, it's a lot of like trial and error, but you're working together to try and create the shadows. Yeah.
You and I, we did an event recently, and I was walking my dog the other day, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was telling him that you and I were going to have this conversation, and I said to him, I was like, I'm writing my questions for Cynthia, and one of the things that we talked about at our last event was this thing she does with perfumes. I'm like, are you familiar with this? And he goes, no. I'm like, oh, dude, you got to hear this answer. This is mind blowing. And I know you've told me this story before, but I want the audience to hear this. This goes back to what I was saying about the reason I started this show is same thing with the cackle, same thing with what you're just doing now with the shadow work. It's all so meticulously crafted and like it's brilliant. And the perfume thing is interesting, and because to me it seems so obvious. Yeah, if you have a scent of
Yeah.
of an arc of where your character is, if you hit that scent, you can be taken to that space. When did this start? And explain how you did it with Wicked, where you were shooting both films at the same time, and the perfume was your kind of your indicator in a way of where you were.
I have been doing this for, I want to say, about 10, 10 or 11 years. Something that I've always sort of thought of, because sense memory is something that I have, and I love scents, and I love smells, and I love perfume, and learning the notes, and I can't go as far as saying that in the business they call it a nose. So there's a person who has a really good nose and who can smell the different notes of perfume and create perfumes. But I will say that I'm good at combining perfumes and good at creating perfumes based on what they are separately, and sort of assuming what they might be together. And so what I tend to do is find a perfume, a scent for each character. And now in this situation for Wicked, it was slightly different, because what I wanted to do was separate the scents by where the character was within her arc. So she has a different scent at the very beginning than she does towards the middle, than she does towards the very beginning of the second movie, than she does towards the end. It shifted often. And the base was always, actually up until it changed at the very end, but I sort of, I go on a search for the perfume. I don't necessarily know exactly what it is I'm looking for. I know I sort of sit with the character and try and figure out who they are. And based on that, I will then search for that quality in a perfume. At the very beginning, knowing that Alphaba is this sort of lonely, emotional, but very earthbound being, I looked for something that felt like it was full emotional, but still youthful, and in my head, there's a youth in floral sense, but I wanted them to have a bit more presence. And so when I smelled a perfume called Lise 41, I think it's called, that was what I got. It was these big scents. It's sort of like tuberose and rose and lily and jasmine, and so it's like these big gardenias, like a big floral scent. But it worked for her at the very beginning, and then as she sort of like gains a little confidence, I found this sort of more oudi, tobacco-y scent called Queer 28, and I put them together. So that was her sort of towards the middle of the first film. By the second film, I take out Queer 28, keep Lise 41, because I still want the base of who she is to exist, and I replace it with Witchy Woo, which is by a really cool women-owned brand, which I found by accident when I went to Soho Farmhouse or something, and I walked into the little shop and I smelled the perfumes and I saw it, I saw the name, and I thought there's no way this could work. So I put it on my skin to see, because body chemistry changes everything. I put it on my skin to see if I kept coming back to it, and I kept coming back to it. So I thought, well, no one will believe me that this is how it's happened, and no one will believe that I didn't pick it just because of the name. But I didn't pick it just because of the name. I the scent worked. So I picked this scent called Witchy Woo by a brand called Vireo, and added it to lease 41, lease 20, lease 41. That's right. And then towards the middle of the movie, the middle of the second movie, I take away lease and make it Witchy Woo only, because now she's Wicked Witch, and I want her to lose the innocence that she has from the first movie. So I keep Witchy Woo and make her fully the witch. And by the end of the movie, I want her to find something totally new. So I keep a touch of Witchy Woo, but not as much as I was using before, and add another thing called Oud Isfahan, which is like oud, but oud rose almost, and another really, it's like a very powerful scent called Promise by Frederick Malle. And that is like I kind of want to look up the notes to tell you what the notes are, because what you end up having is a really complex, deep scent for the very last time you see her. And it's new because she's left everything behind.
And that's the scene where she's singing to Ari at from the tower, and she's out, and yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing to me, because what you just explained, and for people listening to this, movies are shot mostly out of order. And
Right.
so what I can gather from what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're shooting multiple scenes in a day, and let's say, like, sometimes you'll shoot the ending at the beginning, or you'll be in the middle of the film, will you literally go to the scent, smell it before the take, so you know where you are?
I would know.
You put it on you.
I would put it on me. I wear the scent.
That's
I
cool.
wear the scent as the character. And what I noticed was that people wouldn't also know where we were with me, because they know what scent I was wearing.
That's so
They go,
freaking
oh,
cool.
she's coming. This is the second movie, but this is Alphabet. Oh, that's what that scent is. So people started recognizing the scent. Yeah.
I know we don't have too much time left, but I want to mention something. Your movies and the work that you've done, you've been scored by some of the greatest composers in the history of movies. And as a musician yourself, I have to imagine you have a certain relationship to film score and the
Yeah.
way that score evokes emotion. So, like, within a musical, obviously you have your songs, but there's also
Yeah.
a score baked into the movie as well. And I was just going through this just to name a few. Hans Zimmer scored Widows. Michael Giacchino scored Bad Times. Terrence Blanchard, one of the greatest composers of all time, scored Harriet. I mean, Alan Silvestri on Pinocchio, Robert Zemeckis. Like, you have some brilliant composers. What is that relationship that you have then when you see your performance set to score as a musician?
It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite because I think we don't quite understand sometimes that the language on film is only further enhanced by the language of music that comes from the score. And for me, it's the most thrilling moment when the score is put in, because all it does is accent the work. It elevates what's going on the screen in a way that we don't even consciously realize. And so when it's good, it's really good. And I've been very, very lucky to work with some amazing musicians who have who've made these incredible scores, who have who have time for me. So I still email Hans, and Terence and I spoke about the song that I co-wrote for Harriet, and John Powell has been so sweet and lovely, and he sent us full binders of the score. So I have the score of Wicked and Wicked for Good. I have both of them notated. It's just such a lovely thing to be able to be a part of. It's my favorite thing, and it's one of my things that I always ask who's doing the score. And if I'm producing a film myself, I'll ask who are we going to score the film? Who's going to make this music? Because it's really important for me. it's a really, really important part of the film. A film is not complete without a score at all. And I think maybe that's the purist musician in me, but that's I genuinely feel like there is an extra touch of magic that is added to each film when the score is complete.
I agree. I agree. Couple other things in terms of the when I listen to the music, obviously, like you're moved so emotionally by it. But one thing I do find interesting about filmmaking is animals are such a vehicle into understanding who someone is, right? You can tell a lot about a person by the way they treat an animal. And like,
Yes.
I think one of the greatest scenes in For Good is that moment with you and Jeff Goldblum in the like you guys are down by the like all the cages and like
Yes.
and you tell him to run and they all chase him. He's
Yeah.
obviously someone who doesn't treat animals well and
Right.
your character does. And I know there's a great story in the book you tell about your mom coming around to loving the dog that you had growing up. And I know you have two dogs in your life as
That's
well.
right. Yeah.
Why are animals such an interesting vehicle into understanding people? And as a dog owner myself, my wife and I, our dog is our daughter. I mean,
Yeah.
she's everything to
They're like
us.
kids. And
Yeah.
strangely enough, I'm one of those geeks that sort of like has done a little bit of research on dogs' behavior and how they like connect with the world around them, and we underestimate just how intelligent dogs are. They can learn up to 300 words, I believe, like actually learn them. And so they can actually communicate with you using those words, should you teach them how to do so. They can understand those words based on the sound that you make and how you make it and the signs you make, and they learn them. But the wonderful thing about animals is that they're hardwired, specifically, especially dogs, they're hardwired to just to love. And I think you sometimes we can be cynical and we think, oh, it's all manipulation just because to get what they want. But actually, if you pay attention to what dogs do or dogs want, it's not always food.
True.
Sometimes they have no interest in food. They just
It's
want your
rare. It's rare.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they can be food driven, but I have two dogs and they're very different. They're not they're one is food driven. You could train him very, very well. He's very, very well trained. But there are times when he just wants to be close. That's it. And he will be up on his hind legs and he'll tap on the back of your leg because he wants you to pick him up. And she is like a shadow. She'll just follow you wherever you go because she wants to make sure you're okay. And she will sit on my lap in front of me facing the door. There are certain things that animals do. They sort of welcome you into their pack. If your dog has ever followed you into the bathroom, it's because they are worried for your safety. And if they tend to have their back to you and their faces to the door because they're watching to make sure that nothing comes to harm you. They realize that in the bathroom you can be in a vulnerable position, so they want to be there to defend. And so what I've learned with dogs is that if you can extend care to a being that can't necessarily communicate as freely as you communicate with other people, you start to learn how to communicate with other people. They teach you a lot about yourself, patience, where the fear is, because they can also tell when you're afraid, when you're not well, and how and a little bit of joy. They bring happiness, they bring joy, and hopefully that means if you can welcome that in, you can probably extend it to other people too.
It's beautiful. All right, I'm going to end on this because this is something that I was really touched by. So, I listened to your book. I love the audio book. I love hearing you tell the stories. It's funny. People argue sometimes if you've listened to a book, have you actually read it? I'm like, I
Yes,
think
yeah.
you. I think you
You,
have.
yeah.
But there's a part in the book you talk about that when I used to get report cards as a kid, every teacher would write too talkative, asks too many questions, and I mean, obviously mental health has become a lot more destigmatized nowadays, but when I was a kid, I've had anxiety and depression and ADHD and OCD since I was a kid. But you couldn't tell kids back then, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with something or whatever. And so I always just didn't feel like I fit in school. And so when I'm reading your book and listening to your book and you're talking about similar situations where that curiosity. Like I would raise my hand in every class, and teachers would eventually get annoyed. And you tell this great story in the book about Miss Casey, and how that was like a really alarming moment for you because you thought she had your back in a way. And so I just wanted to speak to you about that, because you say a quote in the book about those things that seem troubling as kids end up being essentially our superpowers. They become the thing that guides us. I'm sitting here hosting a podcast where I ask questions and I'm being curious. And then I'm asking somebody because I want to know how this is done. And I'm like, that is the craziest full circle for me to have listened to that in your book. Because I'm like, wow, look at how successful and look at your beautiful career and the life that you've made, and how those things may have been troubling for you when you were younger and how they became what you are today. And that curiosity goes into your research for your characters. It's about how curious you are about the roles. Can you speak to that idea of how those tough times of like not being understood ended up being kind of your superpower?
I think often what I realized whilst I was writing this book is because sometimes these realizations sort of came as I was writing, but like you're saying, that there's this full circle moment of realizing, I was asking so many questions and I was really, really curious, and now I'm here sitting asking questions, being curious, and it's the thing I do for my work. And what I think I learned when I was younger is that I didn't really know how to switch off the questions. I didn't really know how to switch off the curiosity.
Same.
And sometimes, I mean, I so encourage teachers to encourage kids who want to know things, because the want to be curious, the curiosity that we have, the questions that we want to ask, is just a key to us wanting to know more, to learn more, not just about ourselves, but the world around us. And that was who I was. I wanted to know more about everything, about all the world around us. I wanted to understand things. I didn't mind things being wrong. I just wanted to know why and how and where and when. And I still do. And I really think that is a thing that has put me where I am today, because I ask why, where, when, who, what, all the time. And there are times when the person I'm asking doesn't quite understand, even now at this point in my life. But then when it does work, I really stand to gain more knowledge. And then I get to be a more rounded person. The reason I know all of these sort of ridiculous facts and things like that is because I'm curious about things. I'm one of those people that when I watch a movie, I see something and I go, I want to Google that. I want to find out what it is. I want to know I want to understand that. Oh, what book is that? I'm going to go and take a look at that book, and I want to find that quote. And because it means I get to learn more. And inevitably, the thing I have learned is going to come back at some point. I'm going to need that piece of information randomly, when I least expect it. And I want us as human beings to hold on to that curiosity, because it makes us better as people. I really do think it makes us better as people, and it makes us less scared of one another when we're curious about each other. We can't be scared about each other because we have to ask questions. We have to learn more.
I love
And I
that.
think that's sort of what a lot of my characters are based on, what they want to know and what they don't know, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Elphaba's so curious. She's so curious as in the beginning of stages of the film, but she's still curious even in the ending when things are shifting. It's such a beautiful thing, and I'm just happy to know that curiosity has kind of bled over into your work and kind of how you operate. But I'm going to let you go. I really can't thank you enough for doing this. I just want to give Cynthia a shout out, because we're recording this on a Saturday. It is 9 o'clock where Cynthia is right now. She does not need to be doing this interview with me, but she showed up, and it really means a lot to me, especially knowing the the rehearsal structure you're dealing with now. You just came off this whole Wicked tour. I was in the audience watching you fly during the Wicked Wonderful Night. I mean, it's unbelievable. But genuinely, I just want to say thank you because you showed up, and I really genuinely appreciate it. And you're just
Show up
wonderful.
every single time. I think you're one of the most amazing. Can we call you an interviewer? Like, is that a big enough word? I mean, you do such beautiful research, and the questions you ask, they're thought provoking for me, and I did the project, so it's just such a lovely thing to be able to sit here and chat with you. It always is, and I'm really. It means a lot that you would take the time to do it with me. So thank you very much. So
Of course,
I send that back.
as two kids who were in school told we were talking too much and asking too many questions, here we are right now chatting.
Wow.
So this is cool. Thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate it.